How was your sukkahs?
It
And
was really nice. Uh, it was that it had that flavor of nice and joy throughout. So I'm very grateful for that.
but you, but you're very perspicuous, and each time that you go through your davening, I'm sure you add a little kiddush in some way to make. No,
I mean I think it just happens. I don't plan for that to happen. I think it just sort of happens just because
yes,
each
but that
day
is
is
what.
different. Like each day you feel different. But I don't
But,
have a plan.
no, I understand that. I perhaps I misphrased it, but you must have had some moment of insight or something that you had a fresh perspective on sukkahs. And while it's fresh in your mind, if you had it, I wish you would let us know about it.
Um, well, thing is, uh, like a, I'm starting to think big picture first. So, um, well, I, this is, uh, this is a thought that came up with to me during Sukkot. It's not the first time I've had it, but each time I get a chance to think about it, um, gets a little more developed. But I catch myself when I'm in some place new, imagining what it would be like to live in that new place. It could even be driving through small towns in Wisconsin, like imagining, like seeing a house on the corner somewhere and imagining what it would be like to live in this place. And, or this often happens in Israel where I'm just because I have a love of Israel that is just about Israel. That's not just, it's not. So whenever I'm in Israel, this is pronounced. Um, but and the sukkah is sort of like this because it's a context. It's like a place that you enter. And so whenever this happens, so the first moment I'm just thinking about the context or the place, and I wonder what would it be like to live here, and then what would it be like to live there. And quickly I realize that the most important part of my life experience is people, not places. But I I don't yeah, I have to catch up to that idea because I oftentimes will my eye will be drawn to a place. Man, what would it be like to live here? What would it be like to live in Denver? What would it be like to live in California? What would it be like to live in Manhattan? What would it be like to live in Miami? And so, in each one of the places, it starts with the geography, the weather, the beauty, and
The architecture.
or the architecture, and but then as I'm sort of fantasizing about it, I quickly realize that it's 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 the people, uh, that are going to matter more. So, like, I remember one time fantasizing about living in one place, and then I was thinking to myself, well, then, let's say I'm living there, and now, where will I daven? Where would I get kosher food? Where would I do this and that? And then I start to think about, like, what kind of minion would it be, and what kind of neighbors would I have? And before you know it, I'm back to the people. It's no longer just about the place, but about the people that, and so with Israel, because it's such a strong connection to a place, so I can sort of have it at the same time. I remember one time I was in, this was a couple of years ago, and my father and his wife Judy were in Israel at the same time we were in Israel for Pesach, and they decided they wanted to spend Pesach with me and Tzipi and our son Shauli and his family. Now, my father and his wife, they have two other children. I have two brothers who live in Israel. Each one of these brothers has like 10 kids, and they're grown. You know, these are kids that are married. So they have children, they have grandchildren, they have great-grandchildren. So it was like a big decision for them to decide they're going to spend Pesach with us. And so we made, you know, every moment, it was a special moment. So I remember my father and I had this bench that we would sit on after davening. It was right next to a park, and it was tree covered where the bench was, and we'd have a coffee. All the shuls now have these coffee things. Everybody has coffee. So it's after davening, we're having a cup of coffee, and we're just sitting out there, and it was so magically beautiful, and it was a moment, and we knew it was a moment. So we had that like for several days, and then it was Chol Hamoed. And on Chol Hamoed, the entire neighborhood descends on this park, and the aftermath is garbage everywhere. It was shocking how much garbage was just strewn over everywhere. So this place, which had been a kind of quiet, magical place for us, is now completely strewn with garbage. And now, I didn't know this, but the neighborhood hires workers to come and clean up, because they know this happens every year. So I don't know what it says about the people who feel comfortable leaving their garbage everywhere, but by the afternoon, it was all gone, and it was back to being a kind of pristine park. But I remember thinking to myself that you can't have the experience without the people. There isn't Israel without the people. You could try. You could find some remote place, but you can't ultimately escape it. They are somehow, you know, inextricably tied together. And this is true with us wherever we are, that there, you know, maybe there are a few people who have a disposition where they can get out and be alone for a long period of time and just sort of commune and make a connection to a place that is divorced of people. I'm not one of them. And so it's similar with the sukkah, like there's a part of me that thinks I'm in a sukkah, I have a certain opportunity for a kind of connection with Hashem, but it's never just about the sukkah. It's also about the people who you share it with, and that's expected of Yom Tov, especially a Chag, which is a pilgrimage festival. That you're on the one hand, you're on some kind of a pilgrimage to a place, but it's never just about the place. It's about gathering with others in that place, and Hashem. I mean, obviously it's gathering with Hashem, but also with other people. And it's reflected in the various halachos. When it comes to Yom Tov, you're encouraged to have guests and to eat together with other people. It's part of the joy that we have. But yeah, so that was one of those ideas that I keep on coming back to at different moments, but I definitely, it's also something that happened during Sukkot, that it is a context, it is a place, some kind of space, and it has its own unique flavor and characteristic, and it's a mitzvah. So on the one hand, you imagine you're going to bond with the mitzvah, and that is somehow going to be a kind of intimate, lonely experience, but by design, it typically is not. So that's one.
You know, Rabbi,
Yeah.
you read the book, I know you did, called If All the Seas Were Ink.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, but for me, when there comes up a holiday that all of a sudden I want to feel good about, I read a chapter in that book that she wrote, which is like a novel.
About that time?
Yeah, and I just look up her, she does the Talmud there, and I'm just saying that's one of the things that's special for me is to read up on it.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. No, and as was drilled into our heads, and it was done so because it's obviously very important, whatever preparation you can put into beforehand, that you can put into place before a special moment, you benefit from it. And so we were always encouraged to study about a Yom Tov before we experienced this, before we experienced it, with that notion that if you can prepare for it, it makes a massive difference as to what the experience will be. There is a notion which struck me a couple of years ago, which is that there is holiness. We speak of kedusha, we speak of sanctity in essentially three contexts, certainly, or the Torah does, is in three contexts. One of them is place, so you can have a holy place like the Beis HaMikdash. Another is time. You can have a holy time like Shabbos or the holidays. And there are also holy people like the Kohen, for instance. And one of the characteristics that is shared by these three contexts for sanctity is that they are places to gather in the presence of Hashem. So it overtly says this by the Mishkan, by the tabernacle. It says in Parshas Truma, it says, Asuli Mikdash, make for me a sanctuary, or they shall make for me a sanctuary, Vishachanti betocham, and I will dwell amongst them. So ultimately, what's the goal of a holy place? What's the goal of the Mishkan or the Beit HaMikdash? To be a place where people live with God amongst them, or experience, and this is a quality that is shared by all three. So, for instance, when it comes to time, we speak of these special holy times. We call them a moed. A moed is built of a word that means to gather, like vad, like people who are gathering together. So when it talks about the stars, the moon, and the sun, it speaks of them in the creation story. It speaks of them as ways of marking time for gathering, like for people to gather together. And we understand that it's not like from that thing of the Mishkan, it's not just for people to gather, but you're gathering with God in our midst. whatever that means. So, so Shabbos is an opportunity for us to gather with God in our midst. A Pesach is a time for us to gather with God in our midst. Sukkot is a time to gather with God in our midst. In fact, it's a big part of the theme of the book, The Sabbath by Heschel, which is that it works out historically to be absolutely essential that that we have such a thing, that we can gather in time. Because if we were limited to gathering in place, like let's say we just had these pilgrimage festivals and everything about it was gathering in place, then for thousands of years we couldn't experience it because we don't have access to the place we were supposed to gather. But right away, Hashem sanctifies the seventh day. He sanctifies Shabbos, which gives us an opportunity to gather in time. And that's what we have done for thousands of years when we didn't have access to a Beis Hamikdash where we could gather in place. We've gathered in time. So people around the world will say, what are your plans for Shabbos? I haven't guessed who are you going to be seeing, where you're davening. It's but it's not about any particular place. It's not about any particular people. Even it is about gathering in time with people. But it's Shabbos. It's sacred time in that the goal is to not just gather, but to gather with God in our midst. And this is also true about a holy people. Remember one time I was on a trip with some couples. We went to New York, and in a period of 2 days, we were in Washington Heights, Crown Heights, and Lakewood. When we were in Washington Heights, where Yeshiva University is, everybody, when they spoke, at some point or another mentioned Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik, God bless his memory. When we were in Crown Heights, every moment or two, somebody was mentioning Lubavitcher Rebbe, God bless his memory. And when we were in Lakewood, everybody was mentioning Rav Aaron Kotler. It was like each place had this personality that was associated with it, where originally people gathered to be around that person, or at least for a period of time. That's why they were gathering, to be around that person. And each one of them became a kind of center of Torah, of learning, of davening, and of community. So even what we would call a holy person shares this quality that they become a place where people gather to, with Hashem in their midst, kind of thing, but sort of inspired by those people. And this is true even about the Kohen. The Kohen in the Beis Hamikdash is a facilitator of a relationship between God and man. The Gemara questions, is the Kohen God's representative? Is he the Jewish people's representative? Is he God's representative to us, or is he the Jewish people's representative to God? And, you could see a little bit of one and a little bit of another, but it's not simply that they somehow hand off something from one to the other. The Kohen's not like taking something from God and handing it to us, or taking something from us and handing it to God. The Kohen is facilitating a relationship between us and God. Ultimately, it is about us being close to God. The Kohen is meant to be nameless, faceless. They're all supposed to dress the same way. They're all supposed to look the same way. They're all supposed to. You don't show up at the Beis Hamikdash and say, "Is Bob here today?" I really like to have Bob as my Kohen. I really love it when he he does it. You have this whole Bob fan club, and everybody just sort of lines up for Bob, and the rest of the Kohanim are all just, walking around sullen or something because they're not popular. It's not the design. The design is that the focus is not on the Kohen. The focus is on our relationship with Hashem. It's like a therapist. Let's say they're a marriage therapist. So their goal is to create a space where the husband and wife can work through whatever their issues are. But it's not the goal of the therapist to be the center of attention, and certainly not to become part of the relationship. It's the goal is enabling the relationship between the husband and wife, and for the most part, that's the goal of the Kohen. They are, like in Downton Abbey, or in that series Upstairs, Downstairs, which focus on the kind of the life of the people in service and the life of the people that are of the aristocratic class. So when I only know this from these kind of shows. I don't know this from real life. But when, let's say there's a dinner party, the praise for the food goes to the woman of the house. The praise for the food does not go to the cook, even though people know about the cook. And they might even know she was lucky to get that cook or something like that. But ultimately, it's not about the cook. It's about the hostess. And the downstairs, the service class, when they are meant to be invisible, they're not supposed to be speaking to people. They're supposed to be almost neither seen, neither heard. And that's very much the Kohanim. But so the Kohen becomes a kind of a figure that allows for communion, sort of gathering of people in the presence of Hashem. And again, it's not supposed to be about him. So each one of them, they are what we would call sanctified places. And it seems like, or contexts, each sanctified context, it carries with it the assumption that it's a gathering place of people in the presence of Hashem. And so, so that's enough about that. Okay.
Well, one more thing about being with
Yeah.
people on Sukkot. I don't know if it's general tradition or Hasidic or specifically Chabad, but the lulav itself is representing different Jew, a community of the Jews together. So you're already with people.
That's a midrash. And so, like, even if you take a mitzvah item that seems like it could be just a personal item, you're not even really supposed to share the item with other people. It says ulekachtem lochem bayom harishon, take it for you. So it's supposed to be your personal item, and even that, as you're pointing out, you can't help but see the people in it. So that's a great model for this idea that if you scratch beneath the surface, there's always an assumption of people together in the presence of Hashem. Yeah, I like it. Alrighty then. I do have, right now, I'm not sure. I might talk about it on Tuesday night, but I had a funny moment today where since last night and today, you cannot live in Chicago without hearing people talk about the end of the Bears game, which
Everybody, don't talk about it.
did you tape it? Did you tape it?
No, I didn't tape it. It's so, it's so, we were there, we watched it live. Rabbi, you have to be an idiot to have that happen. It was unbelievable.
I want you to know that Chicago excels at unpacking disastrous performances. They really have gotten very good at it, and so lots of time has been spent agonizing over it and pointing out everything that went wrong.
You have this piece of fish, I can't eat.
But one of the thing that struck me was that I went to some site and they had the last play call from a bunch of different sources. They had the last play call from TV. They had the last play call from a Washington sports station, last play call from Chicago sports station. They even had a Spanish play call. So what happens at the end of the game is it looks like the Bears have won, and then Hail
Mary.
So there's this Hail Mary, and it gets caught by the Commander's player, and it's a touchdown, and it completely shifts. It just like in 1 second, it's almost too dramatic a shift from thinking you have victory and then suddenly you have defeat. And as Jeff Joniak, the Chicago sports announcer, characterized it while he was announcing the game, it was a gut punch of gut punches. But what I found interesting was in one of them, it might have been the TV one, or it might have been I don't remember who it was, but everybody's calling it Hail Mary. In football, everybody uses that term, Hail Mary pass. So there's a Hail Mary pass, and then the guy catches it, and the announcer goes,
it was tipped up in the air and it went backwards right to him.
Which is supposed to happen. I mean, they practice that, but it's not supposed to happen if you're on the other team. But
yeah, it was tipped by the Bears guy.
But they put those guys. The formation is you put a guy behind because you're hoping it's going to get tipped. So when it happened, the announcer goes, "It's a miracle. It's a miracle." I kept on saying those words, "It's a miracle." So I wondered to myself if there are any Christian football players who felt that they had in fact experienced a miracle, and would this be a transformational experience for them? Because they call it a Hail Mary pass. Afterwards, the guy's shouting out, "It's a miracle, it's a miracle." So if I was Christian, I imagine, I would think I was present at a miracle.
If you're Chicago fan.
So if you're, I'm saying whatever, but let's say let's say a Commanders player, then you would think that you experienced a miracle. So what would this person's life be any different the next day? Would it be transformative? After all, they believe that they just witnessed a miracle.
It's true.
And so I'm thinking about that sort of humorously because it's a football game, whatever. And then
you're only saying this because Green Bay won.
I'm saying this because I then thought to myself, when's the last time I made a change because I think I saw a miracle? And in the last, few weeks, I do believe that I've seen miracles, miracles. So I was sort of joking and being a little bit snide about calling that a miracle and calling it a Hail Mary, but then it subtly made it clear to me that even yesterday, even on Shabbos, there was somebody was a gentleman was shot in West Riders Park, but
Wow.
very, very likely was a Muslim guy who shot him because he's Jewish. I've watched the Ring video of it, and on the Ring video, it really does sound like the guy says Allahu Akbar before he starts shooting. Now, it's the police were questioned by reporters, and they have been extremely tight-lipped about it because they don't want to say something that they can't take back. The Federation put out a letter saying not to jump to conclusions, let the police investigate it, and before it's determined, what it is. But on that Ring video, you see the shooter. You do not see him shooting the Jewish guy. At the point of the Ring video, apparently he's shooting at police, but he's got a big gun. He is not a rifle, he's got a pistol, but he fires off many rounds when he is shooting at the police, many rounds. So imagine that he has decided that he's going to shoot a Jew. It ends up the Jewish man is wounded in the shoulder. My son AY works, he's volunteers for this organization called Magain, and they do voluntary security for shuls. They're not the security guards, they're just members of shuls, but they train for moments like this. And so my son is one of them, and he had a walkie-talkie on him, and he heard about it. He went outside and went to where the situation had occurred, talked to the police, talked to other people. And so he told me the name of the guy. I don't remember. I didn't know of this person before. The name was not a familiar name to me, the one who got shot, but it was definitely a Jewish man walking a shul on Shabbos morning who got shot. But he was home by Shabbos afternoon. He got shot in the morning in the shoulder, and I know those take a long time to recover from, and I'm sure this is a deep trauma for him. But it's a bracha. If you saw that guy shooting on that video at the police, and that somehow he only got the guy in the shoulder, it's a miracle. Now that's and then the Iranian, ballistic missiles and drones, etc., fired at Israel, and getting away relatively unscathed from that. You could have a holiday for that Iranian one. You could have a Yom Tov. You could have a Purim, especially because it comes from Iran. but it was like a replay of Haman, and we were protected from it. And I felt like it was miraculous then. I feel like it was miraculous. This guy only, escapes with his life from that shooter. And so what have I done different? What am I doing different? I was like being snide about the guy with the Hail Mary pass, but I have to ask myself, I have had miracles. That Iranian one, the missiles, is biblical. That is a biblical miracle. That it on the scale of a biblical miracle. And yet, has my life changed? Like, what am I doing differently because of all of that? But it all started with thinking about the Hail Mary.
Yeah, it was a very unbelievable ending, and And I'm glad that I watched the Packers play too, and they got away with it too yesterday,
Yeah, they did get away with it.
Yeah, but they played well. And Sharon always says, I wonder if the rabbi's happy about the score right now, when they're winning or whatever.
When they're losing. It's painful. Packers fans always assume the worst before going in order to lower expectations. I have found it's universal amongst Packer fans.
Bears are at the same level, pretty pessimistic,
Yeah, although when at the beginning of Bear seasons, they are all in on how it's going to be different. That is slightly different from the Packer fans. Packer fans are just like imagining next week's game against Detroit. That is just,
oh my God, is that who they play?
Yeah, it's gonna with a pause, very likely without Jordan Love.
Oh wow, what happened to him?
He was limping.
I think they said it was a groin injury. They're hoping it's not a serious one, but whatever.
Yeah.
That I think it's Malik Williams, who is the backup quarterback, has been pretty incredible. So hopefully,
I'll enjoy.
I will try not to have Schadenfreude about the Bears. I'm trying.
Schadenfreude, yeah.
Just how one trick pony, my friend Craig said the real miracle was that the Bears were ahead at all.
They did not play well for 3 quarters.
Exactly.
I remember I checked in on the game and Caleb Williams had 4 completed passes.
Right.
And this guy Daniels was the second pick after Caleb Williams. Hello?
Yeah.
Guy, Dan,
yeah.
Right, and he actually just added, 60 yards plus to his passing, yardage yesterday with that last play.
Yeah, you're saying he padded his statistics.
Yep.
That's one way of looking at it.
Yep.
He padded his statistics. Yeah. Okay, here we go. A little bit of Rambam.
One more thing for Liz.
Yeah.
For Liz,
Yeah.
we're all talking about this and the Yankees are losing. I'm sorry, Liz. I really am.
Okay. Now we can go back to the Yankees and the Dodgers.
Thank you for the
I
sympathy.
still remember when it was Brooklyn and the
Yes.
Brooklyn.
I am so mad at the Dodgers for leaving New York. I will never root for them.
Even when they had Sandy Koufax. Come on.
Well,
Come on, Liz.
all right. Well, I liked him.
Okay. That he prohibited us, he being Hashem, from being afraid of the enemies during a time of war. We do not run away from them. Rather, it is an obligation upon us to be resilient, to stand firm, and be strong against the other people. Anyone who retreats and runs away has already transgressed this negative commandment, and that is his may be exalted, saying, you shall not be terrified by them. The prohibition was repeated when he said, do not fear them. This command was repeated frequently, not to run away, not to retreat during a time of war, since it is possible to confirm the true faith with this matter. The regulations of this commandment have already been explained in the 8th chapter. Now, that phrase in Hebrew, he said, the translator from the Arabic says, L'kayim emunat ha'emet. L'kayim emunat ha'emet. To stand up or to fulfill or to establish the true faith. So it seems from the Rambam that this, and it does seem, even if you're reading it in the Torah, it does seem that this is the point. Our trust is supposed to be with God. Our trust is not, it is not supposed to be about what it looks like to our own eyes and what we guess based on our own gut is going to be the outcome. We're supposed to place our trust in God. And that obviously, like with everything in life, you are supposed to make an effort. We see this even about war mentioned in the Torah, but this is like other areas where we put in effort. You're supposed to put in your effort, and then once you put in your effort, you rely on God for your victory. So if you would turn around and run away in fear, that would be a victory of the material, physical reality overwhelming our belief in God's omnipotence. So, and this is specifically talking about battles where God is telling us to fight the battle. If God is telling you to fight the battle, so then you have to do it. So this would be like the spies, with the episode with the spies. God is telling you you're going to go in and conquer, and then they basically say it's not possible. We're not going to do it, and everybody collapses. This is a failure of faith in God ultimately, allowing ourselves to be overwhelmed by what appears to be reality on a physical plane. And denying God's omnipotence. That's what it looks like. Now, clearly, you're going to be afraid. Everybody, if a person is going into battle and is not afraid, they're a freak of nature. They're a freak of nature. It is natural to be afraid. Fear is not an unhealthy feeling. It's oftentimes an important feeling. If there's really something to be afraid of, it's a natural feeling. It's a physical response to circumstances that it doesn't start in the rational mind. It's a physical response that you sort of catch up to with your rational mind. And so it's natural to feel fear. The Rambam is pointing out that the violation of this prohibition, the violation is turning around and running. Turning around and running is the violation. So I want to emphasize, just to suggest, and I think it's important to emphasize, this is talking about a war which God commanded us to fight. We're in a war that God commanded us to fight. Let's say you have two people that are having a dispute. If somebody decides to concede in a dispute, he has not violated this. If you feel you're at war with somebody, or you have a group of people that feel they're at war with somebody, suing for peace or declaring peace, or stepping back from conflict, those are not. Oftentimes, those are the right thing to do. They are the right thing to do. Here, we're talking about a situation where God is commanding us to fight. And in a case where God is commanding us to fight, then we have to have our faith in Him. If you are fighting a defensive war, the Rambam we already saw this in the Rambam. The Rambam says a defensive war is a mechemes mitzvah. When we say mechemes mitzvah, what we mean is God is commanding us to fight. If somebody's coming to kill you, your response is commanded by God. If somebody's coming to kill you, you have to stand up and kill him. This is God's command. You're not supposed to just passively give up your life when somebody's trying to kill you. You're supposed to defend your life, and especially this is true on the level of the Jewish people. So let's say the war we're in now, where it clearly seems to be a war for the survival of the Jewish people, that would qualify as mechemes mitzvah. And in such a case, God's commanding us to fight. And if God's commanding us to fight, the right thing to do is have faith in Him. Some people believe that if you say have faith, that means you don't make an effort. That's not what it means. You do make an effort, but ultimately you're not relying on your effort. Ultimately, you're relying on God protecting us. And let those most recent moments remind us of that. Okay, I look forward to learning again tomorrow with you guys. Very grateful for this opportunity.